everybody, I'm Beebs Kelley. Welcome back to another video. Harry and Meghan have sat down for another interview together. We're going to cover the full interview next weekend, so be sure to subscribe so you do not miss it. But let's take a look at this very telling preview because already we can spot like at least 5 different problems cropping up to their approach to this interview and what they say throughout this interview itself. In just the preview alone, that's only like 30 seconds, already we have 5 major mistakes. But we also have one improvement. In this clip at least, she's not forcing him to hold hands and she's not touching him. She doesn't have her arm planted on him in this short clip. So at least for this portion of the interview, she's not touching him or someone. So, you know, hand holding for the duration of the entire interview is pretty standard for these two. So not doing that is an improvement. The reason why that's an improvement is because it comes across more professional if you're not engaging in physical contact with another person during that time. Because when you are physically touching someone else, it signals that you're giving some of your attention to that rather than being completely focused on the issue at hand. It's also easy to discredit or undermine yourself when you are doing something like hand holding because it does sometimes come across a little bit juvenile or codependent, but even if not, it just takes away from the seriousness of what you're saying. And in some situations, it also looks really immature and just simply out of place. Furthermore, it almost looks uncomfortable to constantly have your hand reached out and placed on someone else's or constantly be holding hands. For example, in their engagement interview, they held hands for the entire 30-40 minutes of it. Could you imagine the amount of sweat in those palms? So I'm sure you guys have already seen the clip. I will just have it run with subtitles over here. In this initial segment here, Meghan makes a couple of mistakes. One of them is spending too much time lingering on that personal statement of her children, their ages, and how wonderful or amazing they are. She really kind of draws that out. While it's completely understandable that she wants to mention how wonderful her children are, it doesn't really fit in this particular interview. It doesn't fit the occasion. So it feels a little out of place. And the fact that she kind of lingers on this moment makes it seem a little bit like maybe bad acting, as we've discussed. Throwing in or lingering on personal details draws a little bit more attention to them than you would want in an interview like this, where it's meant to be more professional and constructive. And we'll get to how they build this versus how this actually went a little bit later. But what she should have said in this situation is something along the lines of, while we haven't reached that stage yet with our children or as parents ourselves, it is essential as parents to learn from the experts so that they are prepared when the time comes to deal with these challenges, for example. Or she could have said something like, we don't yet have personal experience dealing with this as our kids are too little for the internet or something like that, but we are motivated to support change and create improvements for our children's generation, for future generations. Either of those approaches or something similar to it would have kept it from becoming too personal. It wouldn't have lingered in that sort of personal arena. It would have prevented the attention from turning on to their personal lives, which is what she did. Instead, one of those more professional replies would have allowed it to remain professional and on message while still acknowledging the gap in their current phase of parenting versus that of a child who's online, because that does make sense to acknowledge that they don't yet have personal experience with it, but she doesn't really say it that way. So the way it comes across is her lingering on that personal detail and wanting to sort of stay in that space because she really slows down her response to that and doesn't really turn it back out onto the issue at hand in her response. She just vaguely says, glad that we can be part of helping make change or something like that is what she says, which is a really vague response. She doesn't direct it back out onto the issue. Whereas one of these responses would have acknowledged that they're not in that stage of parenting yet, or they don't have personal experience in it yet, without necessarily drawing attention to their children specifically. by mentioning their ages and sort of lingering on how wonderful she finds her children to be, it definitely brings the viewer into thinking about her personal life. But if you keep it to just general language like, we haven't reached that stage in parenting, or we don't yet have personal experience here in this particular issue yet, that keeps it very much in parenting categories, non-specific to her personal life and her personal children. And it would have also allowed her to turn attention back onto the issue at hand by saying it's important for parents everywhere to learn from these experts or have this knowledge in their parenting toolkit for when that time comes, or that even though she and Harry don't have personal experience, they still want to see improvements made for the futures of every kid, including their own, obviously. So there we have two mistakes in her actual answers by making it too personal, coming from the Duke and Duchess of we want privacy, but not really, and by not taking that opportunity to keep the focus on the cause and be professional about it. Another mistake that she made was sort of talking slowly in this moment to where the interviewer jumps in and kind of interrupts her, which was unprofessional on the interviewer's part, but we don't know just how long Meghan may have been rambling and slow talking in this moment. And that's something that sometimes people pause a lot in their speech patterns because they're thinking a lot and they are just having so many thoughts at once that it takes them time to work through whatever it is that they're trying to say. But also sometimes people talk slow and have a lot of pauses to hold that attention and to take up more time in their answer, sort of keeping the floor for themselves. Next, Harry jumps in, and in this segment, again, he has some mistakes in what he actually says. The actual content delivered has some errors. He should have said something along the lines of, it can be very difficult to spot the signs of a problem or distress in our children, especially when it stems from online activity or stresses connected to online activity. He should have said something like, experts trained in these areas can help equip parents with the knowledge that they need to help keep their kids safe and recognize those warning signs, which can be challenging to see, to learn what to do about it. Instead, he throws in this poor choice of words of using first responders. And as we all know, first responders are actual emergency response people. Somebody whose job is, for example, a policeman or woman or a paramedic or a fireman. And so by Harry saying we've gotten to a point where all parents need to be first responders, paints a bad picture. It paints a picture of you've let something terrible happen or something terrible has happened and you need to know how to do triage. Because that's what a first responder is. Somebody who is trained in triage, like field triage, patching someone up to get them to the hospital. That's what a first responder does and knows how to do. Ideally, parents, and what I think he meant is parents need to know how to get out in front of these issues and prevent the need for first responders and prevent horrible things from happening or tragedies from occurring or from things getting so bad that you would need a first responder. I think that's what he meant, in which he should have said, it's getting to the point where parents need to be like counselors or need to be hyper aware of their children's online exposure and habits and activities. Like something like that would have been more well suited to this. Saying that we all need to become first responders or know how to be first responders, it doesn't fit what he's trying to say. It doesn't fit into the context. But I understand what he meant. It just was a poor choice of words. And when you're going to be in an interview on TV, you definitely want to have better sound bites prepared than that. Something that's more well thought out and makes more sense, unfortunately. But I get what he meant. It just was a bad choice, especially when you're going to be, like I said, on TV. You need to be better prepared than this. But if he would have chosen a more professional and well-constructed response about how it can be difficult to spot the signs of distress stemming from online stuff and problems, and that parents need to learn from experts how to recognize these problems and how to prevent these things from snowballing into bigger issues, that would have pushed the attention back onto the cause of better online safety, particularly for children. Instead, he clumsily says all of this stuff about first responders and bringing in literal emergency response workers And ultimately, what this does is illustrate the problem with Harry and Meghan delivering an interview on a subject that demands the attention of experts. People like child psychologists, health professionals, pediatricians, parenting experts, therapists, counselors. These types of people, crisis management counselors, these types of people can give really meaningful, constructive advice to parents on what to look out for. Even some teachers, school counselors would be better equipped to explain these sorts of issues and what to watch out for and the types of differences that can be noticed in children that can be really subtle and easier for parents to miss, and the online safety dangers. There are experts who know a lot about the online dangers that children face and the online harassment and bullying and stuff that kids can deal with, or just confusing content that they're constantly seeing, or inappropriate content that they're constantly being inundated with when they're online. It's overwhelming. And there are people who are experts in internet stuff and internet environments that would be really helpful to hear from. So it's highly disappointing and quite frustrating for me personally to hear people like Harry and Meghan delivering silly statements like this that are not helpful at all. One of the big standouts, looking at the interview itself rather than the content, is the interrupting. In this short, less than a minute clip, we have the interviewer Harry and Meghan interrupting each other. That's really kind of unique. You don't usually see that in these sorts of previews. Interviewers have to be very careful to not interrupt and cut off the person they're interviewing.
Young, they're 3 and 5. They're amazing. But all you want to do as parents is protect them. And so as we can see what's happening in the online space, we know that there's a lot of work to be done there, and we're just happy to be able to be a part of change for good.
That when your children ask for help, someone is there to give it.
If you know how to help.
Thank you.
At this point, we've got to the stage where almost every parent needs to be a first responder, and even the best first responders in the world wouldn't be able to tell the signs of possible suicide. That is the terrifying piece of this.
The vocal fry coming from Meghan is really out of control in this interview. It's really another new variation of the Megs here. We don't always see her using this much vocal fry. Perhaps she thought that it would convey a more laid back or quiet vibe because she's been outed as a very bossy lady thanks to clips like this coming out over the recent months and years. So maybe she's trying to shift her image a little bit by using this sort of vocal fry. And this interview would convey a calmer vibe or something. I don't know. What do you guys think about it? It was really weird, really out of place. Definitely something new and different. We've heard a little bit of vocal fry from her before, especially at the end of a sentence. She'll fall into that and do like right in a vocal fry, but she doesn't usually deliver this much of her, words, sentences, or content, rather, in this tone with the vocal fry. So what do you guys think what is going on with that? I'm curious what you think. But back to the content itself. And I don't have high hopes for the interview this weekend. I'm sure it'll be quite irritating and disappointing. But quite frankly, it is a serious issue that I wish they would approach in a better manner. This is something that I get quite irritated about, particularly when it has to do with children and their well-being. When people who are not experts at all speak like they are, it's really frustrating and it can even be dangerous. I absolutely hate it. Here's the thing. When it comes to online safety and giving advice or making big statements like Harry and Meghan have done in this preview alone and are sure to do in the complete interview, it is much more valuable to have the actual experts give the interview and deliver the content, the answers, what have you. They can actually provide advice from their area of expertise. Meghan and Harry need to not be trying to do this job, because they have no expertise and are ill-prepared for it, ill-equipped to do this, and it's not okay. Already, we see Harry giving a stupid answer and Meghan giving more self-centered direction to the interview. If they really wanted to elevate this discussion and have it be seen the way, sorry to always compare, but the way the royal family does, with Catherine, the Princess of Wales, or Prince William, or King Charles, or Queen Camilla, who elevate a cause And then people can learn about that particular cause, like with the early years and Earthshot, etc. So if Harry and Meghan actually wanted to elevate this discussion, because it is important, what they should have done is perhaps introduce some experts or do a short little 2 or 3 minutes at the beginning and the end of the interview to explain why this is important to them and introduce this team that they have put together to answer these questions in this interview and explain why they picked these people who are experts in their field or have written tons of books and are well renowned for their work. They should have deferred this to actual experts. Once again, we've seen them do this before, but this time it's particularly annoying. Rather than have a personal interview with self-absorbed, absolute non-experts who don't even respect this issue enough to give what's left of their platform over to people who can actually bring value and solutions to this issue. Instead, they're delivering these cherry-picked talking points on a topic that is extremely serious, highly complex, and it cannot be ignored that the Meg has been complaining about news articles since she got with Harry. They've been overreacting to things in the media and on the internet for years. So all of this actually does seem to be about them in the end. It's them being interviewed. It's the Sussexes wanting no negative coverage of themselves, complaining about their own bullying, and they're framing it as creating a safer online world for children because that's the way to make it more acceptable. Instead of continuing to whine about what the internet or the tabloid press says about them, the Sussexes, they've reframed this to align with a noble cause of children's online safety. But because they are so very self-focused, including the very fact that this interview is interviewing them who have no right to speak on this issue at all, talking about their children and their lives and not giving way to experts making silly mistakes, even in a 30-second preview, it seems like this whole thing really is camouflage for them still being butthurt that the internet and the press continue to call them out on their nonsense. Harry also seems a little bit more irritable in this clip. I mean, it is a really short clip, but his vibe doesn't really even come across as constructive here because he jumps in and interrupts and he does this sort of clapping gesture when he says something like he's almost frustrated about the issue or about the interview. Perhaps he hasn't gotten much opportunity to speak. Who knows? Saying that everyone needs to be first responders because even they cannot recognize potential signs of serious issues is delivered in a poor and frustrated manner. They're not educating here because they're completely ill-equipped to do so. We'll see what the full interview holds. Anything short of actual experts delivering educational material that parents actually can utilize to help keep their children safer would be completely inadequate. If you're going to touch on a subject that is so big, serious, complex, and intense, and widespread, it's an inevitability that our children will all be spending a lot of time online eventually. So it's absolutely essential in that case to do so properly, to approach this subject properly and carefully. And that's why I've said experts like 20 times in this video. The experts should be taking the lead here, not Harry and Meghan. Harry and Meghan should have served as experts, and I have no hopes that they will when we see the rest of it. But that's what they should have done. It looks like they've taken this opportunity to put themselves in the spotlight once again, where they don't belong. And it's gross this time. Remember, we will be covering the full interview next weekend in detail, so be sure to subscribe so you do not miss it, and click the like button if you enjoyed today's short little update. And be sure to check out this video here. The last time they touched on this issue was even more gross. Thank you for staying to the end. It's time for question of the day. This question comes from the undergarments tutorial video, which I put out again recently with better pictures, from Sandra. She says, I understand when you're attending formal events, but why do we as women have to wear an extra layer or two of clothes to avoid people seeing bra or panty lines? Obviously not letting yourself go, but be allowed to be human. Well, that's a feeling we've all had, for sure, and yes, obviously, but missing a couple of points here. Firstly, I do always say that these things, when it comes to undergarments and smoothing base layers and stuff like that, really do not matter for our day-to-day lives. They really do only matter for those special occasions or important occasions, or when you want to elevate your appearance. If you want to look really nice in pictures for a wedding or a graduation ceremony or special occasion, or you're giving a presentation, a TV interview, you're doing something big where you really want things to look nice, where the picture's going to be hung in the hallway for all of eternity, you don't want to be seeing tons of bumps and lumps under your outfit. It's not going to boost your confidence. It's just not. So I do try to reiterate frequently that this matters when it matters. It does not matter every day. But also, it's not just to avoid people seeing bra or panty lines. Everybody knows, you would assume, that you likely have some degree of undergarment on. It's not like some shocking thing to see a bra or panty line, but it does interrupt your outfit, and it does add a little bit of clutter, a little bit of mess to an outfit. And that's not saying that's hugely problematic much of the time. It's simply not. I don't wear tons of smoothing base layers and stuff like that every single day. Are you joking? No. It just creates a nice finish that will make your clothes look better, undoubtedly. You can't deny that. And it also is a boost of confidence. So it matters sometimes, not all the time. It totally is just a choice though. If you want to look your best for a special occasion where your outfit matters more, then these things are good to know and helpful to have these things handy and to know what to do. There's not really any way around the fact that a smoother finish underclothes is going to look much better for your outfit, for pictures, for things like that. It just does. It's just one of those things. But of course, it's a choice, and it's definitely not something that anybody should be worried about every single day. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me today. If you have a question for question of the day or thoughts about this preview interview, please leave it in the comments. I cannot wait to read your thoughts there. Thank you so much again. I hope you have a happy day ahead, and I will see you next time. Bye.